Seems like everyone on social media these days has a hot take on ADHD, whether they're qualified to have one or not. So I thought today as a psychiatrist, I'd give my hot takes on ADHD. Because with so much information out there, some of it useful and some of it definitely not, many of my patients find themselves confused about the diagnosis. Because some patients get loaded up on Adderall after just the first appointment, and others go years feeling like their symptoms aren't being fully addressed or heard. So today I'll give you guys my hot takes on ADHD and hopefully give some clarity to this diagnosis and the treatments involved. So there's growing consensus out there that ADHD is what we consider a neurodivergence. And by neurodivergent, I mean someone whose brain processes things differently than what's considered typical, whether that's how they focus, learn, feel, express themselves, or relate to others. It's not less than or anything like that, but rather just a difference. And like other types of neurodivergence or any mental health illness, it falls on a spectrum. And that brings me to the biggest misconception around ADHD, which is when we treat it like a binary, something that either is or isn't, which is definitely an artificial line we draw. In reality, ADHD exists on a spectrum. It involves a whole variety of different experiences, of different ways we interact with the world. So it's certainly not about checking off boxes to see if you meet criteria, but assessing what kind of symptoms do you have and how much do they interfere in your life? All right, so before we go further, I think it's useful to ground this conversation in a few quick points. As I discussed on the prior video on mental health diagnoses and the truth behind what goes into them, it's far from perfect in being able to describe an actual mental health diagnosis, and just far from perfect. Check out the video if you want to learn more about it. But too often people, and especially us clinicians, get way too hung up on trying to decipher with 100% certainty, is this anxiety? Is this ADHD, trauma, or something else that's going on? When in reality, we should just focus on helping the patient, helping you with whatever you're experiencing. And oftentimes the anxiety, the attentional issues, they're all interrelated. And so just focusing on one and excluding the other definitely doesn't do anybody justice. So best not to fixate too much on labels. But if you guys are curious to learn more about how we distinguish or should distinguish between ADHD, other mental health diagnoses, or how to go about a case where that is very unclear and it's not 100% distinguishable between different diagnoses, how to manage that, definitely let me know in the comments below. I'd love to tackle that in a future video. All right, let's get back to it. The problem isn't overdiagnosis, rather it's how we frame treatment. Because too often people, patients, and especially us clinicians, view ADHD as something that if you have it, it automatically means you should be on a stimulant, as though that were the only or main path towards addressing symptoms. But here's the thing, an ADHD diagnosis shouldn't automatically default to a stimulant prescription. Again, that's going back to the fact that ADHD exists on a spectrum, and we even consider ADHD as kind of still nebulous, where traits and impairments vary depending on environment, stage in life, what's going on, stressors, and other factors. For many people that we would consider as having ADHD or falling on that spectrum, stimulants won't necessarily be the best intervention. And for some, it can even be more harmful than helpful. My personal take is that on the whole, we're not overdiagnosing ADHD. The problem is that we're associating the diagnosis too closely with a stimulant prescription, or too quickly jumping to that being the first intervention we implement in the treatment of ADHD. So why is it important to provide people with an accurate diagnosis? That's because undiagnosed and untreated ADHD doesn't just go away or impact you only at work or school. Rather, it can show up in many aspects of life in ways that often is under-recognized and undertreated. For example, anxiety from always falling behind, or low self-esteem from always struggling to keep up or feeling somehow inadequate. All of these things can lead to depression, anxiety, and other types of issues. Too often I've had patients come to me after seeking assessments elsewhere and treatment elsewhere and feeling like they've just been dismissed for having anxiety, depression, and that being the only thing that the clinician wanted to focus on. And then when we further explore their symptoms and their history, it may come up that there is some ADHD, or maybe that was a very initial sort of presenting symptom in their life that then led to many other issues, and now they do have anxiety, depression, and maybe substance use disorders and other issues that haven't been all fully addressed. And addressing how this neurodivergence may have interfered with their learning, their self-esteem, their relationships early on can better help us understand the role that anxiety and depression also later came to play in their life. This is definitely going to be saved for another video, but I think another major component to ADHD is the role of trauma or difficult early life experiences, which evidence is coming to show plays more of a role in determining how severe someone's symptoms may be. I'm not saying everyone with severe ADHD has a history of trauma, but oftentimes we do see that pattern. ADHD definitely comes with strengths, so let's talk about those. This is what we don't talk enough about, the positives of the ADHD, because this neurodivergence, like many neurodivergences, comes with many attributes as well. Many people with ADHD are very creative. They have this superpower of hyperfocus. They're more spontaneous, more curious. They bring energy, originality, spontaneity to projects. I mean, some of the most vibrant artists, inventors, entrepreneurs, and leaders in our history have likely had ADHD, because they do have this true superpower of hyperfocus, of being able to connect the dots that other people may miss, of channeling creativity and intense energy towards things. And this brings me to the next point of that it's not just a deficit, and it certainly shouldn't be viewed as just a negative. Because if you do frame ADHD as a deficit, then people just feel inadequate, lazy, or these other labels that people have given them and that they've internalized. And that's not helpful to anyone.
Another thing I think is definitely worth looking at is the role of environment in ADHD. Basically, are you working to your strengths or constantly feeling like you're going upstream, working against the grain? And some ways to kind of take a look at that is, one, being aware of your strengths, right? So typically people with ADHD are much more creative. So are you working in an environment that's novel, that's giving you an opportunity to be creative, to experience high stimulation? And if not, how can you change it so that it is? Also making sure that you have an organizational system that keeps things organized, keeps you on top of deadlines, gives you reminders. So making sure you have calendars and other sort of reminder systems and to-do lists to keep you organized so that you're not constantly feeling like you're falling behind and forgetting things. Also using your time efficiently, so working in smaller chunks of time, breaking large tasks into smaller tasks so that they're more easily started and finished. So oftentimes it's not your brain that needs to be fixed, it's your setup. This is definitely something I'll get into more in future videos, how to work with your ADHD, not against it.
And this brings me to this video's final point, and that's that we undervalue the benefits of non-stimulant interventions. And don't get me wrong, I prescribe stimulants on a regular basis, and many people find great benefit from taking the stimulant. But if it is part of someone's treatment plan, it shouldn't be the only option, the only intervention. And for many people, it's not even a part of what is most helpful to them. So things like mindfulness, meditation, exercise, good diet, proper sleep, all of these are even more important if you have ADHD. And of course, regular therapy and addressing any other mental health symptoms that may be at play and contributing. And oftentimes, the most important intervention is just better understanding one's own mind and how it works, what its strengths are, what maybe some of the weaknesses are that they need to work on, which is another reason why giving a diagnosis when appropriate is so useful. It helps people better understand themselves. All right, my friends, so that's it for today's video. My main point being that we shouldn't view ADHD as this binary, this thing you either have or don't have, or get stuck in these arguments of it's overdiagnosed, underdiagnosed. Rather, just treating everyone as a unique individual. Understanding that, yes, we have this treatment for this, that's a stimulant, but it doesn't always have to be part of the conversation for everybody's treatment plan. We shouldn't automatically assume that if someone has ADHD or considering that the stimulant should be the automatic go-to treatment option, even though it is very helpful for many. And certainly people with ADHD don't need to be fixed. They just need to be seen and appreciated. And living with ADHD or treating it is never a one-size-fits-all journey. All right, my friends, I'd love to hear your hot takes on ADHD. Go ahead and leave them down in the comments below. I look forward to reading them. And if you like this video, like this content, and want to see more of it, please like and subscribe. It goes a long way. And make sure to hit the notification button because I have a lot more videos I want to do on ADHD and other mental health topics. All right, my friends, thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.